So Rosina here, she had sent me a message. How can you measure the climate impact of traditional investments? And then does changing my personal investments really make a difference? Or do we need to join divestment movements for real change? So let me address the first question, just because this is, I think, a bit of an easier answer for me. I know where to find that data. The second question is a little more philosophic, so we can talk about that. So really what I want to do is, the resource that I use is Morningstar. So Morningstar.ca, the Canadian version here. So Morningstar recently bought, I think it's like a 40% stake in Cyst Analytics. And a lot of you know Cyst Analytics as an ESG research provider. And whereas we can get the individual company ESG scores on Yahoo Finance, I think I've shown that in the past. For ETFs and for funds, we can get that through Morningstar. So remember, my benchmark index is this All Country World Index, ACWI. And what's super cool is I can look for it on Morningstar. I can click on this portfolio tab, and after it loads, let's just give this a minute. Little shout out, I've been drinking a lot of cold brew coffee. So to the good people at Station Cold Brew, thank you for keeping me well caffeinated. So you can see here, when it comes to these ETFs, look at this in Morningstar, I get these carbon metrics. And this to me is just so awesome that I get this data available for free through Morningstar. So you can see here, it gives me the carbon risk score. So this is a number between 0 and 100. A lower score is better. And it's the asset weighted sum of the carbon risk scores of its holdings averaged over the trailing 12 months. So really what they're doing here, it's an evaluation by Cyst Analytics, and it's the degree to which the firm's activities and products are aligned with the transition to a low carbon economy. It looks at things like carbon intensity, fossil fuel involvement, stranded assets exposure, mitigation strategies, and green product solutions. So I've never seen any company like up here. To me, this is a pretty high score, 9.32. You can see here this dotted line, 8.84, that's going to be the category average. So in this category, this is going to be global equity, right? Or I guess they call it here, world large stock, great? So, you know, this is the average. You can see that this ETF is slightly above average on the carbon risk score. This fossil fuel involvement percentage, this is going to be basically how much exposure to fossil fuels it has. They define this as thermal coal extraction, thermal coal power generation, oil and gas production, oil and gas power generation, and oil and gas products and services. So you can see that the All Country World Index, if you were to invest in that ETF, you've got like 11.5% of your money is very heavily exposed to that carbon bubble. That's big. So what this tool lets me do is to look at different ETFs, to look at different funds. I can do mutual funds on here or ETFs. For whatever reason, they don't have bonds. The bond scores are a little, I don't get the bond scores. And certain ETFs, I don't get all of this data. But my starting point, regardless of the ETF, is always to look up on Morningstar, to look up the fund, click that portfolio tab, see if I can get these Morningstar carbon metrics. And that's what's going to tell me what the exposure to carbon is for that specific fund. So hopefully that answered the first question, which is how to measure the climate impact of traditional investments. That's how someone can at least measure their own personal exposure.